Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. So, with me, as always, is my co-host Sam Sanchez. Sam, how you doing?
Good. I'm your icy milk to your Oreo, man.
You are that. You are. Although you might be the Oreo, and I might be the glass of chocolate, or regular milk, whatever. Seem to be much sweeter than me, Sam. All that said, what's new in the news today? I know there's stuff going around about Brittany, but we're going to wait to see how that fleshes out. Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly. We'll wait to see how that fleshes out. Some very cryptic Instagram posts over the weekend, but we'll see how that goes. But one thing, Sam, you like the cinema? You like going to the movies?
Yeah, I love them. I'm a
movies?
movie fan for sure.
Okay, so just to kind of entertain the masses, so to speak, and let's talk the top 10 movies about divorce and breakups. You want to hit those? See what you think of
let's definitely see how accurate they are.
You're my Gene Siskel to my Roger Ebert. So let's just see what this particular person had to say about the best movies about divorces and breakups. So here we go. First one being The Breakup. Vince Vaughn, Jennifer Aniston, one of my personal favorites.
Can't go wrong with either one of those guys. Jen's good to look at, and Vince is pretty funny.
Who wants to do dishes? Why would I want to do dishes? I want you to want to do dishes. Why would anyone want to do dishes? That's great.
That is great. That's a good one. The big piece of that, I think, that is fairly accurate is what do you do with stuff, right? Stuff that you've accumulated together.
Like the apartment.
Yeah. You're both in the same place. Who signed the lease? Whose pool table is it?
Right.
Go a step further. The worst ones, we run into is, we bought a pet. I try to tell people all the time. It's like, if you're going to buy one, wait till you're married, because you buy one and you're dating and both of you kick money in, and then who gets the dog? Are you doing a possession schedule for the dog? It's
I have been in a case where we did a possession schedule for the dog. I don't recommend it though. It was not a good case.
Yeah.
It wasn't a possession schedule for one dog. It was a possession schedule for about 9 of them.
Oh my God. Just let them go wherever the kids go. The dogs be with the kids.
Second was an 82 movie called Shoot the Moon. I don't really know it, so let's just move on. Albert Finney and Diane Keaton. Mm-hmm. 500 Days of Summer. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Zooey Deschanel.
Yeah.
That was a good one. That's about a breakup and getting on your feet after the breakup. I thought that was pretty good. How it goes from the complete high of the relationship to just absolute crash and burn on the breakup. I thought that was a good one. 7 Pieces of a Woman. I don't know that one.
Yes, that's a different one for me.
Shia LaBeouf's in it. Is it LaBeouf or LaBeouf?
I think it's LaBeouf.
Okay, I don't know.
LaBeouf. He's French. French crazy.
I don't know. Marriage Story with the dude that played Kylo Ren.
So I know that got a bunch of great reviews.
Shorthand Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
It was just depressing to me. I mean, I know I do this for a living, but that movie was depressing.
Beyond real life.
Too close to home. Too close to real life.
Yeah, that's hard.
It was a good movie. As far as that goes, entertainment value, good movie. I think it was very real. But yeah, too close to home.
I think a lot of times too, when we talk to clients, when they're talking about stuff like this, or we're giving them suggestions for things that might help them, levity, I think, is one of the things that can really help people through this process. And so I always try to direct people away from super sad, get in touch with the worst part of the process movies, have a little lighter side, or at least a positive ending, whether they're together or not.
Right.
Something like that. So something like that, I think
I think the movie kind of ends with a little, kind of a piece. It's it's a piece. They
find
the piece, but they, you can definitely, there's some battle scars there for sure. Crazy Stupid Love. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's Steve Carell, right?
Right. He goes back out and hits the bars with Ryan Gosling.
My favorite is when he's wearing 10 layers of clothes and he's sweating like a stuck pig. That was awesome.
Right. And then he hooks up with the teacher, his kid's teacher, and she goes psycho on him.
Marissa Tomei. That's Marissa Tomei. Yeah. She does a good crazy.
Annie Hall. I never saw Annie Hall, but I hear Woody Allen, brilliant movie.
Yeah.
Weird dude, brilliant movie. Wildlife. If you're familiar with that, with it's got Jake Gyllenhaal is in it, and it's about a couple in 1960s Montana. Doesn't seem like one I would like. I'm not gonna
Dude,
lie.
anytime they talk about him in Montana, I'm like, I just I don't.
A little too close to home, huh? No, just kidding. A little too yeah, I get it. Eternal Sunshine. That's one keeps coming up on all the lists. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Was that
The Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet. He's trying to get her like removed from his brain. Basically using the powers of science to try to erase the breakup from his mind.
Makes a heartache. I haven't seen it.
But he really wants to have the memories because of the good times and stuff like that rather than the bad times. I mean, that's definitely a it's described as a psychological drama with trippy surrealism and a nonlinear narrative. I suppose that's accurate. And then number one is Kramer v. Kramer. That movie was sad. That was a sad one.
Yeah, again, that's one of those where you kind of look at it and you really, if you're going to recommend a movie like that, hopefully everything is done and you're getting people to be retrospective.
Right.
Yeah, that's
so my sincere advice would be, if you're going through a divorce, don't watch divorce movies about divorce, because they really, in order for dramatic effect, I think they bring out the worst in the process a lot of times.
Yeah, if you are, do something like I don't know, The Wedding Singer, or
Right.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall, something that's just really kind of goofy and silly, and has a way of working itself out.
Or like Liar Liar or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's about divorce, right? That's pretty funny. That's a funny movie.
It is funny. Yeah, there's a lot of funny ones out there. I agree with you. I think that movies, songs, people always talk about it. Like, we've all had them, clients that are just this process. It's a bad time for good people. Most
really is. Really is. Okay, so let's get to the topic du jour, the topic of the day. So let's talk. This topic keeps coming up in my reading and researching things. The issue of paternity fraud. Now, it doesn't come up that often, but have you had a case of paternity fraud? I have.
I have too.
So okay, so both of us have had at least one. So I would say that on the whole, the statistics are probably pretty low. However, we don't know for sure because you never know who's lying. So if you're not going to check, you don't know who's lying, right? I mean, you assume that your wife is not sleeping around on you, and you're the father of your children. But I mean, are you? Unless you're with her every second of every day until that child is born, from the time it's conceived to the time it was born, you don't know for sure.
Especially if they're, you're going through hard times. The people
right.
A lot of times will be like, separated, estranged, but they are still like seeing each other, still having sex, and so you think like, well, we're working it out, and then you come back together and she's pregnant, or that's a.
So I guess hard. The question is not to put women in the bad light, but I'm going to put women in the bad light. I mean, how many women do you think could use this tactic in order to get some financial security out of the situation? It's not impossible to think that it doesn't happen.
No, and I wouldn't think it's only financial security. Honestly, the case that I did, it was more about relationship security.
That was mine as well.
Yeah,
it was partly financial because she didn't want the child support, but it was also relationship security too. She wanted to be with him.
Yeah, she really used it as a linchpin to kind of lock in a relationship and then pass the obligation on to somebody else. And that was, that's just a terrible situation, I think, for all people in concern. But yeah, it absolutely happens. I don't, percentage wise, gosh, it's hard to tell, because there's so much of this goes unreported, right, Brian? I mean, the thing that we know is
it's like male domestic violence. It's rarely reported. Yeah. So the statistics are probably off skew rather. I can give you some statistics if you'd like.
Yeah,
studies ranging from 91 to 99. I'm assuming they don't have as many things sooner than that, but and they're all over the world. I mean, all over the map. Like Mexico's like as high as 11.8%. but as low as 0.8% in the UK. So, and then everywhere in between. But one of the things they did show is that where paternity is challenged. So let's say you're in a relationship, you automatically know there's problems, so you challenge the paternity. In that particular situation, 17 to 33%, so a median of about 26, almost 27% of those cases found that there was a problem with the paternity of the child, which is, I feel like, a fairly high number. It's a quarter of the kids.
Yeah, 1 out of 4. I mean, that's
and so the Brits, those Brits, they did a study in 2016. They said 1 in 50 fathers is unknowingly raising a child of another man. So I don't know how they got that number. I'd really like to see the group and the testing on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting study. Who's they just doing random DNA samples and trying to figure
right.
that one out?
That's the thing. I mean, unless you're willing to go for it and challenge the DNA, and you're never going to know for sure.
Well, the bigger piece beyond that, Brian, is that's a very finite amount of time, right? You and I both know that, hey, by the time you're pregnant, you're in a relationship, let's say you're married, wife gets pregnant and you're thinking, well, could it be mine? But you just take it as, hey, you know what? We're together. She didn't leave. She didn't step out. You have a child. It doesn't necessarily look a whole lot like you. And then you're like, have questions 3, 4, 5 years later, you're like, maybe it's not mine, because now you're really having problems. It's too late. There's usually in most states, at least in Texas, we know, and in Florida as well, there's a finite amount of time for you to be able to come back in a certain paternity or challenge it.
And I get it from a public policy standpoint. I guess I can understand that they want to have continuity in the family and they don't want kids to be subjected to upheaval, like, somebody you going back and, claim this is not my child, the kid's 15 years old, something like that. I realize that kind of situation. So Texas, tell me about Texas law. Let's talk about Texas law. I mean, it's very, very strict with respect to, challenging paternity. So it's one of those things you got to get to. If you're going to challenge paternity, you better get it on the front side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, usually it's the first 4 years that, you come into.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, right. If you're lucky, you're talking about, hey, you know what, birth, you've got that time frame to come back in and assert it. But a lot of times, if you have an order, a final order, that you acknowledge it and accept it, then you could have bigger problems subsequent to that order. So, that's the thing that people need to understand is you come in and you say, hey, you know what, you have your opportunity to challenge paternity through a court proceeding, and you say no. And it's the reason a lot of people say no, well, let's just address that, is because it's very cumbersome, right? It's very insulting. Most women, you get that and you're like, how the freaking hell are you going to say, is it yours? Right. Yeah, it's yours. That's the response that you get, irrespective of what the answer is.
Well, it leads to a whole host of just emotional wreckage.
Yeah, you want to be in a freaking fist fight. Try that with your significant other. And, but a lot of guys, that's the thing that they won't do. And so what ends up happening is that 1 out of 4 individuals who didn't is sitting there really, raising somebody else's child and taking that financial responsibility and burden. Not only that, but if they really knew the truth of that, what happens with the relationship. So that's the bigger.
So let's take the morally ambiguous female. She's hooking up with 2 guys, and one guy's, supportive, financially, good catch, that kind of thing. But she really likes the freaking rock star down the street who, really, really is awesome. He looks good, and she goes for a roll in the hay with both dudes. And then it comes time, oh crap, I'm pregnant. I'm going to have this kid. Mr. Reliable over here has got a good job, can financially support me. Rockstar over here doesn't know where he's sleeping tomorrow night. So what do you do if you're the woman? I mean, you're going to go for that security, right? If you don't know for sure, it could be just as easily, the responsible guy as the rock star, right?
Yeah. And I think, I think women, that puts them in a very difficult position. They're looking at.
Nothing against the group of, very moral and upstanding rock stars that don't sleep around. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No. Yeah, no. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's obviously this doesn't apply to, let's say, the majority of the population of females. But there is a population of females now, and I would tell you that that population is probably growing.
Sure.
That don't want to own up to what potentially may be the answer to that test question. And the reason being is because, one, we know that marriage is in decline, right, across the state, across the country, really across, a large part of the world.
50-50 proposition on marriage. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and it may be less than that now, but basically you go into any marriage, two college lovebirds, two sweethearts, whatever, 50-50 proposition, you're going to stay married for forever.
Sure. And so I think, the younger generation, and this is really, I think, obviously not our parents, but our children are kind of looking at it, and they look at marriage differently. I really feel that they look at that state of being as a legal transaction. Sure. More than an emotional transaction. And because of that, they feel like, hey, we can have that emotional transaction without a piece of paper that says we're married. Now, Texas has common law marriage. Does that qualify? That's a whole different conversation. But in this context, if you're not married and you're pregnant and you're with somebody, but you stepped out of the relationship, but this has been your longtime beau. So you were with the rock star for a night, but you've been with your longtime beau for years. Are you married? No. What avenue are you going to take? Some women absolutely will own up to it. Say, hey, you know what? I had sex with somebody else. We probably need to get a paternity test. I would tell you that is a very, very, very small percentage of women who would do that. I think most women are going to look at both options and weigh them and decide where they want to go, and then just tell that person it's yours. And that's,
like I said, they find the best horse that's going to be able to support them, because you're talking about a minimum of 18 years of child support. Yeah. They want to chase down the rock star going from city to city, doing whatever they're doing, or playing gigs and dive bars or whatever they're doing, chase them down for child support for 18 years. Or do you want to go with Mr. Reliable over here?
The CPA,
who's going to pay faithfully every month.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's where really guys, they have to, protect themselves, their financial future. And not only that, but just their emotional interests, right. Not to say that, some guys are just like, hey, I want to be a father. I don't care who the sperm donor was. If she says it's mine, I'm going to live up to that responsibility and run with it, never look back.
So it looks like there have been some cases that challenge paternity, in California, of course, being the most liberal. However, that that law that Governor Schwarzenegger signed in 2004 it expired in 2007. So what I think is, what I'm going to take a little editorial piece here. What I really, really, really have a problem with here is, I understand the need for continuity of families, right? Mm-hmm. But the law seems to be very much in favor of women's choice, women's, rights, women, like a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And look, Roe v. Wade got overturned. I get that, but what I'm saying is, in general, most laws favor women's bodies, women's reproductive rights, all of those sorts of things. It's a state by state basis. So obviously, you can go to California and get what you need to get done, or whatever, or what some other state, if you can in your state. But my point is that it allows the state, the current status of family law allows the state to take charge of the man, when the man doesn't have any say-so in whether the child's born, whether he's the father or not after a certain period of time. That's why you got to catch this on the front side. And they take charge of your finances. They can take charge of your body. If you don't pay, they throw you in jail. So the rights for the man are very, very, very much not level with the rights of the female when it comes to children. And how many attorney general cases have you been to over the years where they just automatically assume the mom's the primary, dad's paying child support, and that's how it's going to be.
Oh yeah, the standard orders that come out of Texas are terrible, especially the ones that are crafted by the attorney general, because they're just forms. They basically,
I guess the irony is the same women that are running around talking about, screaming and yelling about a woman's right to choose and a woman's body is her own. They're the first ones to go down to the attorney general's office and get the man's body, taken over by the government, so that he's forced to pay child support every month on this child.
Yeah, and I mean, there are avenues, I think, that women need to understand too, is that there are repercussions for perpetrating fraud on an individual. One, fraud is one of those exceptions to that 4-year presumption of paternity, right? So if, let's say a woman came in and showed you a fake paternity test that she got online, because unfortunately those exist, And they
Right.
said, hey, look, you're 99%, it's you. And so you're like, okay, well, I'm dad. Let's go. I mean, let's put it on and start paying for stuff. And then years later, her best friend comes out in a drunken stupor and tells you, oh, by the way, yeah, that was fake. It was Bobby the rock star's baby, not yours. So then you get a real DNA test and you're like, hey, this isn't my child. So there's still avenues and what can happen from that point. Well, yeah, you can obviously try to
How are you
see
going to
that.
get how are you going to get, 15 years of child support out of a single mother?
Never, never. And not only that, but the emotional ties that are established most of the time.
Sure.
You don't want to break them, right? You have a child who believes that you are their father. You're potentially the only father they've ever known. And so, these are just things that not just blow up finances, but blow up just entire families, lives. So.
Blow up and destroy children's lives. That's why I understand how, they want to make it a dead issue after a certain amount of time, because the psychological toll could have on a 12 or 13-year-old child to find out that their dad is not their dad and their dad's going to go challenge it. I could see that. I could see where that would be a disaster for a family.
Well, not only that, we're talking about the family law implications, but there are implications for estate planning and probate as well.
Sure.
Because if you look at it and you say, hey, you know what, I'm 25 and I did a 21andMe test to see where my ancestry was, and I find out that holy crap, I'm not related to my family. Well, what the freaking hell? I'm like, all these other people are popping up on my ancestry chart. So then you're talking about, well, if they weren't your child, but they're in the will and the will's written and drafted in a way that says only your heirs take, then it's potentially the person that you raise their entire life till they're 18. They're off in college, they're married, they think that you're their father, they don't get anything.
Right.
So these are crazy, crazy scenarios that we're talking about, but they happen actually pretty frequently across the country in the state of Texas. So, it's just something that I would just tell people, you want to,
and I can understand the woman that doesn't know, that she had a drunken and one night indiscretion and she doesn't know. I guess I get that. There's active fraud, and then there's like, I just don't know, or I don't want to know.
Passive fraud.
I guess.
I mean, no, I don't agree, brother. I think that it's a hard thing to live up to mistakes.
Sure.
We all know that. And women and men make them all the time. And in this situation, when you're talking about the life of a child and the implications that has for that child's life and for each individual that's going to be a party to this kind of conversation, their lives, I think you just have to be honest. And if you're not, then you just got to know that long-term, the likelihood, especially in this day and age where DNA is so heavily utilized, it's so easily accessible. This was completely different, obviously, 20 years ago.
Right. This didn't exist in the 90s, really. I mean, I guess the DNA trend started coming and getting more accurate in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah, but now you can freaking send off a little sample of hair, saliva swab, and they're freaking fairly accurate. So, and they're inexpensive. So these are the kinds of things that I think that you just have to take into account as an individual nowadays to understand that the reality of it is that it's very likely going to come out. And it's never going to be to your benefit. It's never going to be
intentional lie versus the, everybody laughs about those, those Maury Povich, show scenes where they come on and, the testing has revealed that you are the father. And, then the whole crowd goes crazy. And then the man and the boyfriend start fighting, but I mean, in reality, it's like my dad used to say, how do you know who your father is? Because your mama told you, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's really 99% of the people out there. Absolutely. And then, we've seen things like, where individuals, even on adoptions, right? So an individual doesn't know that they were adopted. They believe that because they were adopted as an infant, they believe that, hey, these are my parents. They're my biological parents. And then, later in life,
blows the roof off of that one.
Yeah, they're like, hey, I've got cousins and a sibling I never heard of. And you're like, what? So these are, that's obviously different, but I would just tell you, like, it's just a different day and age that the likelihood of that secret surviving for very long in the future is probably pretty small. So you should
you would hope that if a woman becomes pregnant and she knows she's been involved with a man during the window of when that child could have been conceived, then she would be honest and come and straightforward. But they aren't always. They aren't always. And as a man, I would tell you, as a man who's not in a marriage, I would tell you that you better get a DNA test I don't care how in love you are with this person,
Oh yeah,
just to be sure.
yeah, and it shouldn't even be an insult. It's like
Right.
it's like I tell people about prenuptial agreements, right? It doesn't matter how much you love somebody. If you got a sizable estate that you're bringing into the relationship, there's nothing wrong with
And if you got
protecting that.
kids,
Yeah, that you're saying, hey, look, this is going to be separate and apart. There are tons of things that you can do to address that same thing in this scenario. There's nothing wrong with looking at the person that you love, that you're going to build a life with, supposedly, and saying, hey, you're pregnant, we're not married. I just want to, have this, so there's no question, and that's just for my peace of mind. I'm not saying that you're a bad person, and I'm not saying this necessarily means I don't trust you. I want to know for sure. I want to have that security, that sense of security going forward.
but like you said, it always ends up in a fist fight, right? And so it's a knockdown, drag out.
Shit, yeah.
If you do it during a marriage, which you can do, I mean, you have the right to contest paternity during a marriage. Now, I will, now obviously under Texas law, you're presumed to be the father if you're married, or if you get married right before the birth, you're presumed to be the father. So you do have to take active steps to disprove that. So, but it can also be done during a marriage. If your marriage is on shaky ground and your wife shows up pregnant, then that might be, now that's going to set off a nuclear bomb in your household. But if you want to be sure, then like you said, that, like I said, I mean, then getting to this at the front side is crucial.
Yeah, because
the backside of this is no good.
Yeah, the longer that you wait, the more that you're denying somebody who's rightfully that child's parent, the opportunity to parent that child, but also tying yourself financially to an obligation that really shouldn't be yours. So,
I mean, and in Texas, if you're a guy who makes a very good living, let's say you make six figures, you're looking at $1,500 to $1,700 a month for 18 years. I mean, and that's assuming they don't raise it.
Oh
so
yeah,
that's a substantial amount of money. So
when in the day and age of like dating apps, the Tinders, the Bumbles, the whatever it is that you're doing, the bar hookups,
the discreet hookups, discreet hookup.com.
Yeah, you're if you're making money, you're a celebrity, you have a substantial estate, you come from family money. I mean, even these are people who are targets a lot of times.
Right, there's a lot of vultures out there.
Yeah,
lots of
vultures. And if you're not from that side of the fence, but you're just freaking crazy and wild and do stupid shit, then you absolutely need to ensure that what you're doing is the result of what you did and not what you didn't.
Right. Once you get your seed out into the world, I mean, you don't really have control over it anymore. So, you got to take responsibility for that and make sure, you understand who you're hooking up with and what the potential repercussions of that are. And like I said, there's a fair amount of responsibility, I think, for both parties here in this situation. There's obviously the female, that kind of we've kind of got it linked, but the male has some responsibility here too. Know who you're hooking up with. I mean, but in this day and age, the day of the casual hookup is upon us, I think.
Yeah.
So people don't get to take the time to get to know who they're hooking up with anymore, I don't think.
Yeah.
So you got to take extra precautions if that's the lifestyle you want to lead. And I'm not here to judge anyone. Because there's only been what I was able to find, 4 cases, one in Georgia, California, Florida, and Iowa, that allowed paternity fraud to even be argued, and they all aren't great. So, you would have to prove active fraud. I mean, I could see where the law would try to come up with a differentiation between active fraud and just willful negligence.
Mm-hmm.
On the part of the mother. Well, I don't really want anybody to think I'm a slut, so I don't want to tell anybody what I did.
Well, and what a woman needs to hear, I hope, is that you leave yourself open to collateral attack, right? From the past. You allow the possibility that your past can come back to haunt you at the worst possible time. So if you take that risk and you say, hey, you know what, I'm just not going to tell him about this other person, and where I'm just going to assume this is, his child, and something were to ever transpire, then somebody that maybe you had a terrible relationship with, or that you wanted to cut out of your life, or that you would never, ever want to be able to come back in and destroy your child's life, the sanctity of that life, to look at their father in a different way. You're allowing that potentially to happen by doing that, by not being.
So this Tennessee case was actually pretty interesting. Hodge v. Correct came out of Tennessee in 2012. talked about the woman willfully, I guess, and intentionally lied to the man. They got divorced. He paid child support. He was awarded damages, 15 years worth of child support as a common law remedy for intentional misrepresentation. They distinguished it from an award for retroactive child support, which is interesting. So they were allowed, I guess, allowed the suit to move forward under common law as opposed to child support law. And it didn't, it was an action for damages, and it did not de-establish paternity. So that's kind of an interesting kind of little weave in there. So it didn't do anything to overturn, I guess, the case where, man ordered to pay child support, man's legally determined to be the father. But it did allow for, because based on the wife's actions of intentional fraud, allowed him to get 15 years worth of child support for damages. So interesting Tennessee case. So that looks like some of these courts are allowing these cases to proceed in tort as opposed to family law. So allowing them to proceed under. I think you're muted on me, or lost your mic.
Better?
Good, perfect.
Okay. I was just going to say basically that, there are lots of remedies civilly, I think, that you would be able to utilize to go after somebody like that. Whether or not they're successful, obviously, is going to depend on the state, but there's definitely the avenue for you to be able to sue, whether you recover. I mean, and like we talked about, so it's a single mom with a 15-year-old. Do you think you're going to get freaking dollars from her? I mean, no,
that's going to be a non-paper win, most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, she's never going to be able to come up with 15 years worth of child support if she's living hand to mouth. And most of the time, like I said, most of the time these women need the support to raise the child. I mean, you can argue about the amount or whatever, but a lot of times the money is needed. Whether, you can argue about how much is needed, but at least a portion of it is needed. So how are they going to have the money to pay a sizable judgment?
Exactly.
So any final thoughts on this sucker?
Well, I think, try a funny movie. Don't watch sad movies, breakup movies, if you're in a breakup. But beyond that, I would encourage people who, whether you're married or not, and it's, you have a question, you have any inkling, or you just want to know, then there's lots of avenues for you to be able to get answers to those questions about paternity, get them early. And then when you find out, you really probably need to talk to a lawyer, because you're very likely going to be involved in some type of legal proceeding.
I mean, and I would tell you that if you're going to get married or you're going to have children, it's worth an hour consultation with a family lawyer to see what with the divorce rate being 50, it's worth an hour consultation with the lawyer to find out what you're up against should things go sideways. I mean, there's no harm in getting information based on, like I said, if you're going to get married and have children with someone, it's probably best to know what you're signing up for. If things go bad, I mean, you hope things go great and you're not one of the 50 on the bad side, but I'd probably have different advice if it was like 70-30 or 75-25 or something like that. I would say, well, it comes up, but it doesn't happen that often. But the divorce rate being 50-50, it's worth really, really paying attention to, because the woman you divorce is never the one you married, right? And same thing for the woman. The man that you divorce is never the man that you married. So everybody goes through changes as you mature and as you get older, as you have kids, as your life changes. So, are you going to be in love with this person 20 years from now? I know the vows are to have and to hold till death do us part and all that, but apparently death until death do us part really means 50-50.
Comes a lot faster. Comes a lot earlier than it used to.
Or until the shit really hits the fan, or he's sleeping with the secretary, or whatever the case may be. So
exactly.
But like I said, I think it would be advantageous if somebody's going into this process, or if you have a question about the paternity, do it quickly.
Don't wait,
because that paternity test needs to be done shortly after the child is born. and those decisions need to be made in really short succession thereafter. So yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, B. Abercrombie at aswlawoffice.com. You can find us at www.aswlawoffice.com. Sam, how can they find you?
You can email me at ssanchez at aswlaw.com, lawoffice.com. And, obviously we have direct lines. You can reach us if you're in the Metroplex in Dallas, Fort Worth, or if you're in the Miami area, or hell, anywhere in the state of Texas, we pretty much go anywhere. So definitely reach out. If you don't talk to us, talk to somebody who knows and is licensed and can help you and guide you in that type of a situation.
Because there's no easy answers, but I mean, if you have a plan and if you're armed with the knowledge, I think you're a lot better off. All right, man. Thanks for the time today, and we'll well, let's see. Is there any other movies? Wasn't there a movie with Jennifer Aniston in it where she was getting the sperm from the sperm donor and her ends up being her friend?
I can't lie. Any Jennifer Aniston movie is usually going to rank pretty high on my list. So I've probably
forget
seen
what the name of Jason Bateman's in it. It's the one where he
is that The Switch or the
yeah,
Switch
something like The
Over?
Switch or something like that, where he's really fathers this child, and he was the friend zone. He was the guy that was friend zoned for years.
Yeah. It's a different world, man.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, with the DNA testing these days, I mean, it's just something that this issue of the law is going to be. I think it's in its kind of infancy stages, and they're going to probably have to start sorting some stuff out, because there's definitely not an equilibrium here when it comes to men and women in this case.
Oh, hell no. And then you talk about gestational agreements and frozen sperm, frozen eggs, all things that we can kind of go down rabbit holes with. But yeah,
absolutely.
Different time.
All right, brother. Well, have a great week, and we will talk soon.
Sounds good.